Hello everyone and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. This week we are focusing on Halloween. So as you can see, we are going to be working on the Coco inspired trick or treat bag. So some of you might have little ones that have seen the movie Coco, which is a Disney movie that's based on the Day of the Dead theme, and so I thought it would be fun to make a little treat bag with that movie in mind. So this is perfect for young children, older children, or anyone who likes to get a little extra creative on Halloween, in fact. So I'm going to take you through how we put this bag together. This project is going to be done in 3 videos, otherwise it would be way too long. So the first video is going to be the bag itself, including the eyelets and the handle. In video number 2, we're going to work on the eyes, and then in the third video, we're going to take you through how to do the nose and the mouth. And in each video, we will attach the links to the preceding video in the description box down below. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you should be able to have enough time to get this done just in time for Halloween. So let's grab all of our materials together and let's get stitching. Okay, let's get started. I'm so excited to use all these fabulous colors. So for me in particular, I am using cotton yarn. I just feel it's a little bit stronger. For this project, you can actually use acrylic yarn. It doesn't really matter, but for things like bags or anything that's going to have weight in it, I like to use the cotton. So I've got a few different colors with me. You're definitely going to need a darning needle to be sewing in your ends, as well as some of the appliques. Always should have a pair of scissors on hand, and for this project we're going to be using my favorite hook, the 5mm hook, also known as an H or a size 8. What I'm going to do for my bag portion is I'm going to use white. So I had some left over from another project, and I just picked up another skein here just to be on the safe side, and I'm using the Bernat Handicrafter cotton here. I've also got some black. You'll need that for some contouring, and some fun colors like this yellow, which I had left over from a previous project. And I've got some of this hot pink, which, in case you're interested, it is actually called hot pink. So there you have it. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start off with the actual bag. So we're going to start off with our white yarn. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make the bag from the bottom up. And what'll be slightly unusual with this bag is we're going to make this a round shaped bag. Okay guys, hopefully you can see this a little bit better. I figured since I was using white yarn, it might be nice to have a dark contrast. So I've just put a little bit of some black fabric down here to help us see our work better. So to begin, we are going to start with a cinch circle. And then once you create your cinch circle and chain 1 to secure, we are going to chain up 1 more. Okay. For this project, we're going to be using half double crochet stitches. So we're going to do a total of 8 half double crochets into our cinch circle. Now remember, the chain 2 usually counts as 1. I'm not going to count it for this project, just to start off. So we are going to half double crochet 8 times into our cinch circle. Okay, so that means you'll yarn over, insert into the circle, pull a loop through, so you have 3 on your hook, yarn over, and you'll pull through all 3. Okay, so you're going to do that 8 times into your circle. Okay, once you've done 8 half double crochets into your cinch circle or magic ring, what you want to do is you want to take that tail and you're going to cinch your circle shut. And you want to pull it nice and tight. Okay, there we go. And then what you want to do is you want to slip stitch to join. So usually you would find the top of your chain 2 right there, but because we did 8 full half double crochets, I'm going to ignore that. Sorry guys. The black against the white are two big contrasts. Okay, so I'm going to find the first full stitch, which is right there, and I'm going to just slip stitch to join. Okay, and so now you've got the bottom of your bag like that. So now we're going to chain 2, and we're going to go on to round 2. For round 2, we are going to do 2 stitches into each stitch from the previous round. So I am going to go right back into that first stitch there, and I am going to do 2 half double crochets. So for this project, I'm never going to count the chain 2. This just is going to help me create a much more snug bag and uniformity with my stitches. So I've got 2 half double crochets, and now I'm going to go into the very next stitch, which is right there, and I'm going to do another 2 half double crochets. And that is what I'm going to do all the way around. So for round 1, we had 8 stitches. At the end of round 2, you should have 16 stitches. So go ahead, pause the video, and do your 2 stitches in each stitch all the way around. And I'll meet you back here for round 3. At the end of round 2, you should have 16 stitches. And now we're going to find the top of our first stitch. Remember, in this project, we're skipping our chain 2. And my first stitch is right there. So I'm going to insert my hook. Might be a little tight with the cotton yarn. I'm going to slip stitch to join here, and we've completed the end of round 2. Okay, so you should have 16 stitches. We're going to go on to round 3. So we'll chain 2, and right back into that very same stitch there, we are going to do a half double crochet. And for round 3, we are now going to do 1 stitch into the next stitch, 2 into the next one. So whereas in round 2, we increased every stitch, here we're going to increase every second stitch. So to increase means we're going to put 2 stitches into 1. Now I'm starting this round with only 1 stitch first. Remember, the chain 2 does not count for this project. So in the next stitch, I'm now going to place 2 half double crochets. So there's 1. And here's the second one, right back into that same stitch. Now in the next stitch, which you can see is right there, I'm only going to place 1 half double crochet. Okay, and then in the next, I'm going to place 2 half double crochets. Right back in there. So I think you can see where we're going with this. So the next one would be a single, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, all the way around. At the end of round 3, you want to have 24 stitches. Now, if you end up having 23 or 25, it's not the end of the world. But this is a great practice on making sure that we pay attention to our stitch count. It just helps your work look much more uniform and smooth. But again, if you end up having an extra stitch, you can always just pull it out or keep it in. It's up to you. It's not the end of the world. So I will meet you at the end of round 3, and then we'll move on to round 4. Here we go. At the end of round 3, you'll have something that looks like this. So now you can really see the bottom of your bag is taking shape. And we're going to move on to round 4. So you'll chain 2 again. And this time for round 4, we are going to do 2 individual half double crochets and then your increase. So we're going to go right back into this first stitch here to create our first one, which is 1. Then we're going to go into the very next stitch, which is right there. Can be a little tight if you're using the cotton yarn like I am. So just be careful because it can get, your yarn can split quite a bit, which will make it just a little bit annoying, but you can do it. So we've done 2 individuals, and now into the next stitch right here, we're going to do an increase. So we're going to do 2 half double crochets right into that same stitch. So we go right back in and 2 half double crochets. So remember the two chain 2 does not count. So we have 1, 1, 2. So that means in the next stitch we will have 1 half double crochet, and then in the next stitch we have 1 half double crochet, and then in the next stitch we are going to do 2. And as usual, this is the pattern for the rest of round 4. So you're going to go 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, all the way around. At the end of round 4, you want to have 32 stitches, okay? You know what to do. I will meet you at the end of round 4. So at the end of round 4, we have our work looking like this. We're going to go into round 5. Now, keep in mind, I am making mine for a toddler, so I'm not going to make it too large. I also want them to be able to carry it and not have too much challenge with it. If you're making it for a slightly older child, you can absolutely make the base as large as you like, especially if you're going to an area where you know they're going to really score big on the candy. So we are going on to round 5 here. And then I will set you loose because pretty much any rows after this just continue on this similar formula. So in the last round, what we did is we did 2 individual stitches between each increase. And then for this round, we're going to do 3 individual stitches between the increases. And then the following round would be 4 individuals and then 5. So if you wanted to keep going bigger, you can. I will also put a link in the description box down below about the basic principles of crocheting circles and how you can keep increasing them to the size of your desire. So for now, we're going to chain 2. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my round with an increase this time. So right back into the space here that I chained 2 out of, I'm going to do 2 half double crochets. So the chain 2 just gave us a height, and we're pretty much going to ignore it from here after this. So we insert again, and then we'll half double crochet back into that same stitch. So we've already started with our increase. I think I've discussed this a little bit before. Sometimes I will alternate whether or not I start a round with an increase or I start it with an individual stitch. And I will go back and forth sometimes because that helps to keep the curve of the circle intact. Sometimes if you just continuously place the increase in the same spot, like increase above increase above increase, it starts to create little corners. Like sometimes it's very subtle, but it starts to take on this like octagon-y, hexagon-y shape sometimes. So that's why if you're wondering, well, how come she didn't start with an increase last time? Sometimes I alternate where I begin with the increase. If that confuses you, just continue as you've been doing. So I've done 2. So now I'm going to do an individual half double crochet into the next stitch. And then I'm going to do another one into the next stitch. So we want to do 3 individual half double crochets. And then I'm going to do 1 more into the next stitch. And I really apologize with the focus here. I realize that white yarn on a completely opposite contrast, no matter what, just seems to give the camera a hard time. There you go. So we're going to do 2, then 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so at the end of round 5, you should have 40 stitches. So go ahead and I will meet you at the end of round 5. Okay guys, so I'm going to take you on to round 6, and then I'm going to set you loose to do as many rounds as you wish. At the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds, you're going to have 40 stitches, and I'm just measuring mine here. I have about 3 inches, 3.75 inches, just under 4 inches in diameter. So I have a little person, like I said, I'm making this for. I will probably go up to round 7, maybe 8. So it's completely up to you how wide you would like the bottom. So this is the bottom of our bag, and then we're going to continue to work it up from there. So let's go on to round 6, which hopefully at this point you've figured out the formula we use here. So we're going to chain 2 as always to start off our round. And now we're going to do 4 stitches in between each increase. So I'm going to go right back into the same stitch to do my first half double crochet. I'm going to do 1 into the next one. So this will be my second one. And then into the next one will be my third. And into the next one will be my fourth. And now what I'm going to do is my increase. So I'm going to do 2 half double crochets. So there is 1, and there is 2. So round 6, you'll have 4 individual stitches and 2. So you'll then count 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's 2 in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 in there. And you know how this goes. So I'm going to set you loose to do that. If you go on to round 7, you will have 5 stitches in between each increase. If you're going on to round 8, you're going to have 6 stitches in between, and so on. So guys, I'll meet you at the end of your bottom, and then we're going to talk about working the sides of our bag. All right, so I have gone ahead and done 9 rows. I thought I was going to stop at 8, but then I thought, maybe we'll make the bottom a little wider. So this is 9 rounds of half double crochets, and I'm just going to get my measuring tape here. So I crochet, I would say medium tension. I'm not a tight crocheter and I'm not a loose crocheter. I would say I'm pretty even keeled. So my diameter with 9 rounds comes up to just shy of 7 inches. So that's 6 3/4 inches. Or if you're working in centimeters, that's going to be about 16.5 centimeters. Okay, so for me, I'm happy with that. And now we're going to work up the side of our bag. So we no longer require any more increasing. I'm going to continue on with the white, but I am going to add an accent just around the rim before we continue moving on to the bodies. So I'm not going to snip off. I'm just going to take out this black here so that we can then work a little bit easier with the contrasting yarn. Now, it is going to be black, but if you understand what we're doing, I don't think you're going to have an issue at all. And so you can see I'm coming up to the end of that little leftover I've had. So I think I put it on the top of the screen at the beginning, but these generally come in 50-gram skeins. Some of them say 42.5. This one is also 50. So just give or take a few grams. But so for my white, definitely having 2 skeins of these was a good call. Okay, so what we're going to do, and we're just going to do this for 1 round. So now this is the right side of our work, which will be this. It'll sit flat like that. So this is the inside of our bag now. And then you want to weave that tail in when you get a chance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my white, but I'm just going to set it aside for a second. And I'm going to introduce my black yarn here. And what I want to do is I want to just create a little bit of a trim effect in the black. Because the bag is actually going to represent the face or the skull, I want to give it some contouring with the black. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce that here. And I'm just going to pull that through. I'm going to leave a bit of a tail. I'm going to pull that through. And I'm going to chain 2. And you just want to hold these two ends a bit because they're not fully secured. 1 and 2. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to do 1 half double crochet all the way around. There are no increases here, but there will be a bit of a twist. So I'm just going to move that white yarn now off to the side. And I am now going to be working around the posts. So you may have recalled some of my previous tutorial on post stitches. So instead of going into the top of the stitch there, see that there? We're going to work around the post, but we're not going to work in front. We're going to work technically behind. So we're going to talk about a back post. So I am now going to yarn over, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my hook in the space in between the stitches. Okay, so I didn't go into the stitch. I came from behind and I went in between the stitches. See that? And now I'm going to just poke back into the back. So what that did is that pushed the post of the half double crochet stitch to the back. Okay, if we've talked about front post stitches, you would have seen the stitch popping forward towards us, but you only see the hook. So we're pushing that stitch to the back. And now we're going to continue working that half double crochet as usual. I'm going to try and work over this tail, so that's why I'm bringing it around. So I'm going to yarn over and pull through. So you're going to pull it through and up. So you have 3 loops on your hook like usual. So I just want to make sure that you guys can see it okay. And whoops. And then I'm going to yarn over and resolve that stitch as normal. Okay. So now at the bottom you can see the black coming through, which is what we want. Okay. So now that's what we're going to continue doing all the way around. We're going to yarn over. We're going to insert our hook. See that? The space is right there. Into that space. And then around back through the other side of the post. Okay. Then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all the way until I have 3. Now I want to make sure that I work over that tail, and it should have been tucked in under earlier, but I'm just going to loop it through here and pull it through. I hope that doesn't confuse you guys. Worst case scenario, guys, don't worry about the tail. You can weave it in at the end. I like to kind of work over my tails as I go if I can get away with it. So I'm going to do that again. And I'm just going to try my best here. I know it's black yarn, but it's only for a short little part here. So I will yarn over. And I am going to insert in through the space between the stitches. So now where I worked my last one, you can see where that is. And I'm going to push this through to the other side of the stitch there. I'm going to yarn over to pull through, and I want to pull through all the way around. So see, always have 3 loops on the hook, and you can see it wrapped itself around the post. Such a cool effect. Then you yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So what happens there is it's allowing the white to sit. So when the bag sits, you'll see a little bit of that white showing, and then you'll get this accent in the black, which is what we want. We just want one round of black to add as an accent, a contouring for the bag, okay? So that's all you're gonna do all the way around. So I'm gonna do that one more time, yarn over. You're going to come from behind and insert your hook in the space between the stitches, see that? And then I come forward and I insert to go back to the back. So you can see the stitch has been pushed behind. I'm trying to work over that end. Then I'll yarn over and pull it through and through again so that I always have 3 loops on the hook. Then I'll yarn over and resolve the stitch as usual. Okay, so now you can see it a bit more. So you got this really cool stitching on the bottom of the bag. It'll look like a little stitch around, and you're going to have an accent row. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then I will meet you at the end of our accent round, and then we're going to pick our white back up. So don't worry about that one. You can just leave it sitting there. We're going to pick it back up shortly. Okay, just coming up to my last couple of stitches here. All of these are back post stitches. Once you get in the groove of doing it, it will become a little bit easier. So we have one more there. Okay. And we are done. So you can see your work looks something like that, and I love how that came out. So this is the bottom of the bag, and actually if you wanted to, you can embellish the bottom with a face as well. So now it'll sit nice and flat, and you've got this great little rim around the edge here. So what I want to do now is I am going to slip stitch to join. Whoops. So I just want to find my first stitch here. I'm going to go over that chain 2, and don't worry if you can't see it too much on camera. Just wherever you find your very first stitch, we're going to get you to slip stitch in there. And I'm using cotton yarn, so it's a bit tight. So I'm just going to pull that through. I'm going to snip off my yarn because I'm not really going to be using this color for a while now. And then I'm just going to pull that through and fasten off. There we go. Okay, so that is so cool. I love it. So now we're going to pick up our white yarn, and this is where things are just going to get back to being a little bit easier. So we are going to find our white yarn, and we are now going to continue doing 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way around. But just for this first round, I know I keep saying it's going to be super easy, and it is. Just for this first round, I want to work into the back loops. In fact, okay, I'm going to show you something. If this starts getting too confusing for you, you can just work into your regular stitches from here on out. But because I always like to add a little bit of extra texture to my work, as you can see here, these are the tops of the stitches, your V's, right? A half double crochet creates V's on 2 sides. So you've got a V at the top, and a lot of times you're going to see this V on the side. So these are the top 2 loops, and this is the bottom, what's going to be your bottom back loop. And the reason why is because that's facing the inside of your bag. So if your work is here, your front loop is the loop that's closest to you. The back loop is that one there. That's the bump that's furthest away from me. But if I turn my work over, I have a bottom back loop, which is that one. And that's what we're going to work into to create a little bit more texture. So what I want to do, I'm just going to ignore that little tail there. And again, I know the black is a bit challenging, but I promise once we get into the white again, it'll be a-okay. So these are the top two loops, is the front loop, the back loop. I'm just going to go and find the back bottom loop, which is that one right there. Front loop, back loop, bottom back loop. So I'm going to insert into the back loop, bottom back loop, and you're just going to have to help it through a wee bit. There we go. And then I'm going to take my white and I'm going to reintroduce it. So I'm just going to pull it through. I'm going to chain 2. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. See, the top 2 loops are still intact. We're working into the back bottom loop. So now we're going to yarn over and go into the next stitch. So these two, this V here is the front. We're going to find the back. Bottom loop, and I'm just going to help it along there, right there, okay? I'll yarn over, pull through, and pull through all 3. So this will create a cool little ridge effect coming along here. If this is, I realize this is super, I can't get my camera to kind of focus and create decent light here for you to see. If it's becoming a challenge or super annoying, which I understand, just work 1/2 double crochet into each stitch all the way around, not the end of the world. But if you're up for the challenge, you want to try and go into the back bottom loop. So see how these V's, they're going to sit pushed to the front. So it'll create a little bit of a braided look. So I'm going to yarn over. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. And then see that? Now that you've pulled a few through, you can start seeing now the back bottom loops there. So, whoops. Now I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to go into the next back bottom loop and pull through all 3. Just like that. So hopefully you can see now that it'll look like a little braided or knit effect sitting forward. So just do that all the way around. Okay guys, so I'm really happy with how my little accent came out there. So hopefully you can see that. So you can see, hopefully you can, that because I worked into the back bottom loops, it pushed the top of the stitch forward, which creates this really cool knit or braided effect along the outside there. So now you can really see that my bag has a bottom and now the sides are starting to work up nicely. So now that's all we're going to continue to do is stitch up through the white, and we are no longer going to use slip stitches to join. We're just going to keep working in the round, and that way it will give us a nice seamless look. Now you can either put a stitch marker here at this point, so you just kind of keep in mind where the end of your round is, or you can just, because I've left this tail out for now, you can just always gauge by where your tail is. Now stitching in the round as opposed to the slip stitch does kind of shift the stitch over every once in a while, but it's not the end of the world. At the top of the bag, we're going to round it out evenly anyhow. But normally I would have slip stitched in here to join, but I'm just going to continue working a regular 1/2 double crochet right into the top of that stitch, and that will bump me up right away into the very next round. So you see it closes it in, and now I'm working on the next round. So now super easy. I am going to work into the stitch, and it's simply going to be 1/2 double crochet into each and every stitch all the way around until I get the desired number of rounds that I like, which will give me the height of the bag. Now, again, if you're making your bag slightly bigger on the bottom, you may want a deeper depth. I was looking for the right word. So you can see that now, again, no increasing. So you can see that the side of our bag is now going to start working up nicely. I am aiming for a depth of 8 inches for my bag. That's just what I decided for this particular size. Again, you can work the depth, the height or depth that you wish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going all the way around, one stitch. When I come to the end here, I am not going to slip stitch. I'm just going to continue working all the way around. So it's just going to continue going in a spiral until I get the height that I want. And then I'm going to meet back up with you guys and we're going to talk about how to even out that last round, and then adding contour back into the top along with our handle. And then we'll come back and talk about the Coco themed embellishments. All right, so you can see I've got quite a bit of height on my bag now. So I have done mine to a depth of 8 inches. Again, I'm making this for a toddler, so I wanted to make it deep enough so that when we close up the top, you can still see the face portion of the bag, but I didn't want to make it too big that they'd have to lug it around and drag on the floor. So we have been working in the spiral round, so that means we have not been slip stitching to join. So there is going to be a little bit of a jump. So I just want to show you, I kind of got a little bit overzealous here. And I've already kind of wound down my round. If I can find the beginning. Oh, here we go. So I'm just going to show you what I did here. So if you can see closely, you should be able to see that these stitches look a little bit stacked or thicker. And then you can see that all of a sudden it starts getting taller. In fact, I worked them down. So we've been doing half double crochet stitches. And I knew where kind of the end of my round was because when I looked in my bag, there's my little short tail. Some of you might have wanted to use a stitch marker or a safety pin or something, just so you knew every time you came around to a full round. So I know it's approximately there. So what I did, a few stitches in, is I started working a few single crochets, about 3 or 4, and then I worked about 4 slip stitches. So what that does, because there is a bit of a jog when you crochet in the spiral, what we want to do is we want to merge it so that it all just kind of looks like it's the same level. So the height of a half double crochet is going to need to kind of be shaved down, so to speak. So in the light, hopefully you can see that. So the half double crochet, then we go to singles, and then it eventually just kind of merged right in there with slip stitches. Okay, so I'm just going to do one more slip stitch here. So I just pulled through, and I pulled through both of them. So now, and at the end, it's not going to be a big deal. So you can see it all looks much more uniform now. And once we do the handle rounds, you won't even notice it. But this is a little trick that I do to kind of even out a project that I have been working in the spiral round. So that means we have not been closing off with slip stitches. So I've got the height that I want, and now I want to bring back my black trim to kind of solidify the base. Now I am going to leave the white here, so I've just got it tucked in there. Because I will most likely use it as another finishing row at the very end. So instead of snipping it off, weaving in the end and doing that, I'm just going to keep it on the line there. So I am going to reintroduce the black very briefly, but This is a technique you should be kind of familiar with at this point. So we're going to introduce the black back in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another slip stitch, but this time I'm not going to pull for my white. I'm going to place my darker yarn, which is the black one, and I'm going to use that one to pull through the stitch and pull through the loop. And now I've introduced the black, and I'm just going to pull the white a bit tighter. And then this short tail here, you can either tie it in, maybe I'll just do that, and then work over it. Or you can just directly work over it, whatever is comfortable for you. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are just going to chain 1, and what I want to do here is I want to work into the back loops only, and it's just a little style thing. If you want to keep it easy, you can work right into the full stitch. I'm going to yarn over, and now I'm going to go into the same, technically the same stitch here, but I'm not going to go into that space. I'm going to go into the back loop. So if you recall our tutorial on identifying parts of your stitches, these little V's are the tops of your stitches, and we're just going to go right down the middle, and there's the back loop there. Okay, then I'll pull through. So there are 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, and you're going to pull through all 3, just like a regular half double crochet stitch. Okay, and so for this round, that's exactly what you're going to do. I'm going to make sure I bring that in there so I can work over my tail. So again, I'm not going to go into the full stitch. I'm going to go and pick up through the back loop only, and I'm just trying to work over my short tail. I'm going to pull through, and then all 3. And so you can see it's leaving the front loop there to create a little bit of a ridge. So I'm just going to do a couple more of these so that hopefully you'll get the idea of the effect. Whoops. Trying to work over my tail. So I'm going in the back loop and then pulling it through. There we go, guys. So I've just worked a few so you can see that those front loops get pushed forward. It just gives it a cute little ridge effect. It also really shows off the teeth, I like to call them, of the half double crochets, which really adds to the theme, the Halloween theme we've got going on here. So this is what we're going to do for this round at the end. You're going to do that all the way around the top of your bag, and when you come back around, you're just going to slip stitch to join, and we will fasten off at that point. And then we've got another color we're going to bring in. So I know the black is really annoying, but it's very brief, and hopefully at least it gave you the gist of what we need to do. So go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you for the next color. Alrighty, so I have done my round of black, and now I'm just coming up to do my slip stitch. Now what I want to do, because I want to carry this, I just want to make sure that I catch that yarn as well. So I'm just going to go into the top of the next stitch here. I'm not too particular if it's the chain 1 or not, because this is all going to snuggle nicely together right to the top there. And I'm just, see how I'm putting the white up here? Because I want to trap it inside this slip stitch so that by the time I get, so the white keeps carrying up to the next row just behind there. See that? So then I'll be able to pick it up. But I'm not actually going to pick up the white yarn just yet. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to snip this black since we are done with it, leave a bit of a tail. And I want to bring in our hot pink color. So we are going to introduce this color here. And we're basically going to do the same thing we did with the black color. I am going to tie that off. Okay. And then I'm just going to do a slip knot with the hot pink. Just like that. This is going to look great. Isn't that great against the white and the black? I just want to insert my hook right about there. So that's where we fastened off. So that would be the top of that stitch. So I'm just going to insert my hook there. Again, notice that I'm just going to leave my white yarn there. Once I've inserted my hook, I do want to work over this short tail. So I'm just going to keep it tucked down. And I'm going to pull it through and just slip stitch to join. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to keep that tail there. Now I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to go right back into that same stitch again. And I'm going to work a half double crochet. So we're basically repeating what we did in the previous row. The difference is I am most likely going to work right into the full stitch as opposed to the back loops only. So there you go. And again, I'm keeping my little tails tucked in there, and I'm just going to work right over them. So I'm going to go into the very next stitch, which is right there. Pull through to all 3. Okay, so you know what to do. 1 half double crochet into each and every single stitch all the way around, and in this case I'm working into the full stitches. Then I'll meet you at the end where we will slip stitch to join and bring in yet another color. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of our hot pink round. I just love how that pink and the black contrast just look great together. So we're coming up to the end here, and we want to, oops, we've got one more to do. And actually this is where my white yarn is. So I'm going to carry it up again, meaning I'm just going to tuck it in with it. Pull through. Oops, I don't want it to show. So that's my last stitch. And now I'm just going to slip stitch through the top of that pink. And again, I just want to kind of carry that white up. So I'm just going to tuck it down there, and I'm going to slip stitch to join. And then that's it for my hot pink. There we go. Love that. Actually, it's not it for my hot pink. I have the yellow I'm going to add on at the end. I'm going to keep the hot pink for now because we are going to make some loops for a cinch top as well. So to create our cinch top, we're going to chain 1 to begin, and then half double crochet back into that same stitch. So I'm just going to go right back into that same stitch and do a half double crochet. Okay, and then I'm going to do another half double crochet into the next stitch. Next, I'm going to chain 2. Then I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches, and into the following stitch, I'm going to half double crochet again. Okay, so see how that creates an eyelet there? That's what we're going for. Okay, so into the next one, we're going to do a half double crochet. Oops. Careful your yarn doesn't split, which is quite common with the cotton. So I'm going to do a half double crochet into the next one and a half double crochet into the next one and one more. So for now what we're going to do is we're going to half double crochet into 4 stitches, then we're going to chain 2, you'll skip 2, and then half double crochet 1 into each of the next 4 stitches again. And so this will create our eyelets going all the way around the top of our bag. Okay, so here I would do another one so that we have our set of 4. And then chain 2, skip 2, etc. So that is what you have there. Okay, so do that all the way around, and I'll meet you here when we're ready to cinch up our round. So this is the second round of our hot pink. Alrighty, so we've got our eyelet row all the way around, and the math didn't work out perfect, but it's no matter at all. We've got technically 1 stitch left. Some people might consider that 2. We've just done our 4 half double crochets. I'm still going to chain 2 like I normally would, and then I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of that full stitch right there. And it does not matter if it looks a bit uneven, because at the end of the day it'll all blend in nicely, just like that. Okay, we're going to do one more round of the pink just to solidify our eyelets there, and then we'll be done with the pink. And I think the last row I forgot to carry up my white, see that? But not to worry. You can either do the white at the top or not at the end. I'm still debating whether or not I'll do that. I will carry up my white here. So I'm going to chain 1, and see how I snuggled that white in there. I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to half double crochet, then I just drop it. So you see it just kind of brought that up to that level. This is the inside of the bag, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. And so then I'm going to half double crochet back into that same stitch. And now we're just doing 1 half double crochet all the way around again. So that's a stitch there. And then in the spaces, it's up to you. You can go right into the stitch or into the space. And for me, I just go into the space. Just makes life a little bit easier. So there's 1 and there's 2. Okay, and then you work into the stitches, 1 into each of the 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we've come up to a space, so we just single crochet 1 and 2, and then we go back into the stitches. So this is just going to solidify our eyelets there. So see, that's what that's going to look like. All right, guys, all the way around to the end, and then we're going to snip off our hot pink. So we're going to end up having 3 rounds of hot pink. And here we are coming up to our last spacing here. So we've got 2 half double crochets, and then we're just going to slip stitch into the top of that next stitch, and we are done with our pink trim, just like that. So we're going to snip our yarn. I'm just going to leave a little bit of a tail there. can weave that in afterwards. And actually, so there we have our eyelet row. Now, doing all these rows is adding more depth or height to our bag. And again, because I'm making this for a toddler, in fact, she's 3, I don't want it to be so deep that she's going to end up dragging this on the floor, which she may still, but I don't want to keep adding more length. So I'm actually going to snip off my white. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I do want to add in a little bit of our yellow detail for our handle. So that's what I'm going to do here. Okay. So I am going to snip off the white here. I'm going to leave a bit of a tail. And then I'll weave that in later on. So in fact, I can just pull that out there like that. And then we can weave that in. And it'll be perfecto. So it's so cute. I love that black and pink together. So I do want to introduce a touch of this yellow because that will be, these 3 colors will be part of the eye embellishments that we'll do later on for the face of the bag here. Okay. So now, actually, before we start on our handle, I just want you to kind of fold your bag down. And what I do is I use the end here where I snipped off as kind of my starting point. And then I just lay this end flat. Now, of course, the bottom is round, so it's not going to affect that. But so ideally what we want to try and do is create a handle somewhere in the middle third of each side of the bag. So in this case, now that we've done the eyelets, it's going to be super easy to see where our third is. So if you've got 1 eyelet, 2 eyelets on each side, now you've got these 3 in the middle. So what I recommend is get a stitch marker if you're not good at eyeballing it. And so I'm just going to use these couple of scraps of yellow yarn here as stitch markers. So now what you can do is you can get an exact stitch count, or you can just use your eyelets as a guide. And if I open that up, the other eyelets fall in the exact same spot. So I'm very happy about that. So what I think we'll do is we will create a handle just at the outside edges of these 3 center eyelets. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up right there, and there's the edge, and I'm just going to pull these little pieces of yarn through, and these are just going to act as markers for me so that I know where the handle should go. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in the center of this one. Again, this is for a small hand, so I don't want it to droop too much. So I'm just going to move this one over. So I'm actually going to go in the center of that eyelet there. So I hope that makes sense. Just going to pull that through so that my opening for the hand isn't too big. So do you see that? So these markers fall actually in the center of these 2 eyelet openings. And I'm going to do that on the other side, and what's super easy is I just flip it over and I just match up the stitches. And so in this case, the eyelets are here, and so this stitch is going to be right here. And don't worry if it's not precise, don't worry if it's not precisely perfect, because again, projects like these, nobody's going to be sitting there looking at the exact width of your handles. They'll be too enamored by your handiwork, and that's my story. So there we go. So we've got our 4 little markers here, so at least we know where each handle will begin and end on each side. So now that we've got that in place, we're going to introduce our yellow yarn. Okay, so we'll begin with a slip knot. And I'm going to insert it where we left off here with the pink. So I'm just going to insert it right there. And then I'll use a slip stitch to join it in. And I will continue on with my half double crochets. So for now, and I'll just work over those short tails there, I'm going to chain 1, go back into that same stitch and half double crochet. Whoops. There we go. And then that's what I'm going to do into each stitch all the way across until I get to that first stitch marker. Just trying to tuck in all my tails there. If you find it distracting to try and work over your tails as you go, don't worry about it. Just leave them to the end. You can always weave them in at the end. But I'm very particular about liking to get them out of the way as soon as possible. But it did take me a while to get comfortable doing that. So if it's a bit too much of a distraction, just drop them and come back to them later. Okay, so you can do that all the way until we hit that first stitch marker, and then we will chat. Okay, so I have something that looks like this, and I'm coming up to that first marker here. So I am going to just continue to do a half double crochet. And then my next one has the marker in it, and I'm just going to take that out because I don't need it anymore. And I will half double crochet into where I have that marker. Now, I counted ahead, and in between these markers, I have 11 stitches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to proceed to chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm doing one less because once we come back around and reinforce this, it does tend to stretch. So again, I'm trying not to get this bag to droop too much to the ground. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to where we have our next stitch marker, and I'm going to half double crochet into that same stitch. So once I've inserted that, I can get rid of that, because now our spots are marked. There we go, half double crochet. So see that? That's the beginnings of our handle. And now we just continue on doing 1 half double crochet into each stitch until, you guessed it, we get to the very next stitch marker, and then we will proceed to do the same thing. Okay? So you'll single crochet 1 into each stitch all the way around. Once you hit this stitch marker, you will stitch into it, chain 10, and then reinsert into the next stitch marker with a half double crochet, and then you're going to finish out the round by just doing 1 half double crochet all the way until you get to the end. Okay, so look at how great those colors look. All right, guys, I'm going to set you loose, and I will meet you at the end of this round. We're almost there. All right, guys, just at my last stitch, and now I'm just going to go to the very top of the next stitch, and I'm going to slip stitch. So we now have something that looks like this. So now we have our handles, okay? So we're going to do one more round because, of course, these chains are just kind of the base of our handle, and we just want to fortify them a little bit. So we are simply going to do one more round of half double crochets all the way around. So we're going to go 1 into each stitch, and then when we go into the space, you can either stitch directly into the stitches or the back bumps or the spacing, whatever is your preference and comfort level. I'm most likely just going to go into the spacing, and I'll show you what I mean by that once we get there. So you know what to do. The usual, when we start the beginning of a new round, I've just been chaining 1, and then I go right back into the bottom of that same stitch, and I do a half double crochet to get me started. Okay, so 1 into each stitch, and I'll meet you at the handle. Okay, so here we are. I've just stitched into my last stitch before I hit the handle. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take advantage of that little spacing there. I'm going to insert, oops, just to give me a little extra fortification going into the space. So I've got 10 chains here, so I'm going to half double crochet 10 times into the space. Now, when we're working into spaces, a lot of times we will need, because there's stretch involved, more than the allotted number of stitches. So just because there's a chain 10, usually I end up stitching 12 into the space, sometimes as much as 14 or 16. So you're gonna have to gauge that however you feel. So I'm gonna work a regular half double crochet. I'm gonna just go into that space to yarn over and pull up a loop, just like a regular half double crochet, and then I just pull through all 3, okay? And so for now, I'm going to start off with working 10 into the space. So it does get a bit wonky is my favorite word, because there's nothing really to grip onto. So I just try my best to kind of keep it as steady as possible. So you can see it's wrapping, the stitches are wrapping themselves around the chain. But see, when you have a work like this that wraps around the chain, what happens is the stitches tend to start to bunch in a bit more. And that's why a lot of times you will most likely stitch more stitches than the number of chains you have. Hopefully that makes sense. I know that was quite a bit of a mouthful. So I'm going to go ahead and do that until I've filled the space and I feel that so you can see now we've got much more of a substantial handle there, okay? Okay, so here we go. There's our handle, and I ended up doing 15 half double crochets into that space. See that? Because they're snuggling up next to each other. So 15 stitches into the space. Okay, now I'm coming up to the end here, so I just jump back in and work into the stitches that are there. So 1 half double crochet into each stitch. So see that? So now it's just going to jump right back in. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so continue on doing 1 stitch into each until you get to the next handle. You will work into the spaces if that's what you wish to do. If you do that, you're going to do 15 half double crochets into the space. If you're working into the stitch directly, you will only do 10, of course, because there's only 10 chains. Okay, and then you continue on until we come to the end and the body of our bag is finished. Coming up to the very last stitch, and now we're going to slip stitch into the top of that stitch, and our bag, the body of our bag, is now done, just like that. So I'm now going to snip off my yarn and fasten off, just like that. Okay, guys, so we have a bag done. So now I'm just going to weave in this end and these little leftovers here. So that's the bottom of our bag with the black trim. So remember, the bag, the body is representing the face or the skull, right, of the Coco inspired bag. So like a lot of Day of the Dead decals and illustrations. It's always a skull, and then there's some brightly colored embellished eyes and nose and mouth. So that's why I made this bag in the white, and decided to use some of these fun colors for our trim. So you've got your handle here now, and we've got our eyelets ready to go, so that if you want to, when it's not in use, you can cinch the bag shut, and it really looks like the face or the head of the character. Okay, now we are going to move on to the fun part, which is all the fun embellishments. So we will talk about the little cinch rope at the end. We're going to move on now to making the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. You can work one side the face, maybe the other side you want to leave blank, or maybe you want to monogram it. And for those of you that want to monogram your bag, there is a little tutorial we have on a stocking that we monogrammed last year, and I'll put that in the description box down below as a link in case you would like to monogram it. Okay, but in the meantime, let's move on to our eyes.